Tonight, the story that we are about to begin is so grotesque and so long and so morbid, taking over the span of 35 years, that we had to break this episode into 3 different parts to tell you the entire story of Samuel Little. Tonight is just part 1. Samuel Little was born June 7th, 1940 in a small town of Reynolds, Georgia. His mom name was Bessie Mae Little, who was a 16-year-old streetwalker when she had him. She was impregnated by a 19-year-old Paul McDowell in a cemetery when Paul and his friend were competing to see who could seduce more of the town's girls. Small town, and they were both, I'd imagine, were going after some of the same girls even.
Cemetery.
Yeah, that should.
That's where I love to pick up my girls too, man.
Or at least knock them up at,
yeah,
right?
You get all the bad ones there at the cemetery. Just okay.
So Bessie Mae lived with her grandmother because her mom had died giving birth to her. So Josephine Little, which was her grandmother, acted as a midwife during the birthing process. Josephine, however, was not a good woman herself. She hated the fact that Bessie had a baby out of wedlock and did not even allow her to name the baby. And once the baby was actually born, she would even whisper into the baby's ear, "I curse you," at birth.
So she was doing voodoo to the baby.
She was doing some voodoo on that baby.
No wonder this dude turned out how he is.
Yeah, this baby was doomed from the
created
start.
In the cemetery and then whispered voodoo
Yeah, and created out of a broken home to begin with. It was all bad. It was doomed from the start. Bessie Mae even told Samuel later on in life that not only did she not want him, but that she had even tried to kill him in the womb by tying a rope around her belly and having a friend pull one end while she held the other, or even drink turpentine to try and poison the baby.
Yeah, this is a morbid.
It's already a rough start for any kid, right?
Tough.
When Samuel was 6 months old, Josephine threw Bessie Mae and Samuel out of the house and told her that she was not welcome back until she gets rid of the baby. She never made any specifications or suggestions as to how, just said, you come back without the baby or you don't come back at all. Also fucked up.
Definitely.
Now, mind you, Paul McDowell, again, wasn't in the picture. He wanted nothing to do with this baby to begin with. In fact, the only reason he even, had sex with her was out of sport. So,
right.
Obviously, going to his place for her was not an option.
He fucked up. He didn't have no pullout game. He shouldn't have been doing shit in the cemetery.
I mean,
leave it to the professionals,
in
buddy.
the 40s, did they even give a shit about a pullout game?
He should have.
I don't know. It was different times. Did they even know what the hell that was? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you get someone pregnant in the 40s, you was having the baby.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, you should have been cautious.
Right.
There was no turning that back.
True.
Not now.
So Bessie Mae ended up walking a few hours in the rain with the baby. She slept underneath a home since the region that they lived in, it was known for flooding. So a lot of the homes were built on stilts.
Yep.
So she slept a few hours under the home. When she woke up, she then proceeded to walk to the road, drop the baby in the mud, and then walk home. She abandoned him right down the side of the road.
Okay. Why in the mud? It's strange.
Because it was
whatever.
It was all soaking wet, still probably from the rain. So
why she had to walk so many miles? There was no mud elsewhere nearby. I don't know. That's just me analyzing. Go ahead.
You just way too much into that. About an hour later, a local trader by the name of Quint, who was driving a cart that was being pulled by a goat.
Quint the cart goat.
No, this is
Quint the cart goater.
This is funny because there's more to Quint. And you'll hear about this here in just a second. So, yes, 1 hour later, a local trader by the name of Quint was driving a cart that was being pulled by a goat down the road and saw the baby in the mud. Quint, however, had no legs. Like I said, There's more to Quint. Fucked up, right? Whole story's fucked up.
Okay.
I know. Listen, Quint still managed to get down from the cart,
Poor Samuel.
get the baby, put the baby into the cart, and then pull himself back up in order to save the baby.
Man, he must have been body strength. He was doing the push-ups.
He had to, because that's all he had. On top of that, he must have been, somewhat logical, right?
He can do burpees.
Right. He can do dips like a motherfucker, though. All right, but, and pull-ups.
all
fuck
day.
me. Now, since Reynolds is such a small town.
He skipped leg day.
Every day since he lost him. Yes. Since Reynolds is such a small town, Quint knew who the baby belonged to, right? Like everybody, it's so small, everyone knows everyone,
right.
Kind of town. So using his powers of deduction and reasoning, figured that the mom was the one who dumped the baby on the side of the road, so there would be no point in taking the baby back there. Okay. So Quint instead takes the baby to Paul McDowell's parents' home, who were Fanny and Henry McDowell, who immediately take the baby in. They named him Samuel. Paul still wants nothing to do with the baby.
He still didn't have a name?
He still didn't have a name. 6 months old, still did not have a name.
Well, I guess we came a long way.
Yeah.
A long way, shit.
So it was actually his maternal grandparents
on his father's side named him.
Who finally gave him a name.
So what was the grandparents' name again?
Fanny and Henry.
Last name?
McDowell.
But they still gave him the asshole grandmother's last name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's...
Because she was Josephine Little?
There's different records on which name he takes. The majority of them say Little. The only reason he would ever turn to using McDowell, and we'll get into this later, is when he's using an alias to try and get out of arrest.
Okay. So it's just strange that they named him, but then they gave him that, I guess.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah. So again, Paul at this point still wants nothing to do with this little bastard. In fact, Paul even enlists in the military so that way he could go away to war and avoid all his responsibilities.
Like an eagle. He was like, I'm gone.
Yeah, he wanted nothing to do with that motherfucker.
Damn.
And here's where things start to get a little more twisted. So Fanny and Henry, instead of letting Samuel know once he's old enough that they were his grandparents, they raised him saying that he's their kid. So he thinks that Fanny and Henry, while growing up, majority of his life, are his actual parents.
I got a problem with people that do that.
Leading him to believe later on down the road that Paul, the dude who's actually his father, is his brother. Yeah. So it gets...
You motherfuckers out there that do this is sick. Like, you think they're not going to find out? You're causing more damage, but that's for another day.
Definitely for another day, and today is that day, my friend. So in December of 1942, Henry leaves to Ohio to go and work in a factory and saves up enough of his money for 2 years. So that way in 1944, he can move Fanny and Samuel to Ohio with him. Into Lorain, Ohio is where they moved to. In 1945, Paul returns from the war. He poses again, like I was just saying, as Samuel's brother instead of letting him know that he was his dad. Paul married another woman there by the name of Betty, and they had 7 kids together, and they lived in the same town. No, don't worry. He doesn't end up sleeping with one of his sisters or brothers.
No, that's why he became a psycho.
Well, yeah, it's a rough start. This is not...
Because of everybody else is fucking doing, he became a psycho. Like,
yeah. Oh, there's more. There's a whole lot more. Trust me, I'm only on page 4 of 22 that I have written here. When Samuel was 5 years old, he was molested by an uncle and was also bribed by that uncle with money in exchange for fellatio. So, let you know just how fucked he was.
You said uncle?
Yeah, it was one of his uncles.
What's the dude that found him in the mud?
Well, that was Quint. That was just a local trader.
My uncle would be just like Quint. A legless bitch. Let's go.
Stupid. All right, so when Samuel was 8 years old, he was obsessed with this redhead girl in one of his classes, as well as the teacher that he had, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sight of his teacher adjusting her scarf or touching her neck would cause him to get an erection. It's kind of a weird turn on, weird kink, right? But that's what worked for him. Samuel would often get in trouble for teasing girls that were teasing him to begin with, right? And he would always be the one that would get caught. So this always would start to cause some sort of like erotic frustration from it, because he's like, well, what the hell? Why am I the one that's always getting in trouble? They started it, kind of deal, right?
Yep.
Because Samuel, he would always come to school with like raggedy clothes. So all the girls would tease him, and he hated that. He said that all he wanted to do was love them, hold them, smell them. That was what he was quoted.
And they wouldn't give him the opportunity.
He wouldn't give him the time of day. He would also talk about how looking at women's throats would make his dick hard, and his desires eventually would become drives. Fast forward a little bit here to 10 years old. This is back in 1950. His obsession for women's necks grew into something darker and more masochistic, as he would begin to buy detective comics and would get aroused by the drawing depictions of girls being strangled in these comics. So it would start to be a huge turn on for Samuel here.
Strange, man.
Horrible. So it was the combination of the humiliation, the sexual frustration, rejection, and the feeling of being inadequate that would become offset by the brutal act that ensured domination and reassert control. And that's what would eventually turn him on. It was the fact of taking back the control that he feels he's lost from these women, right? Not long after this, Samuel would start masturbating at the thought of strangling women, even though Samuel would only view this as a secret fantasy and not something that he had planned to act out at this time. Remember, he's 10 years old. And he's already getting a hard-on and masturbating to the thought of strangling women. That's dark. That's disgusting.
Yeah, you ain't supposed to start masturbating until about 14.
I mean, some start
like
earlier.
13,
Yeah, that happens.
14.
You know.
Like, damn, 10?
Bad.
He was ahead.
And dark. It's one thing to like have sexual thoughts here and there, but to have that dark and twisted of thoughts at that time and at that age is scary. That's a recipe for disaster. In 1952, Samuel hops on a train with three of his friends, Billy and Jimmy. They run away to another town called Oberlin, Ohio. Once there, the three boys steal bikes from the front of a gas station. The clerk working there sees this, and he calls the cops, and within 10 minutes, the boys get arrested. This eventually becomes a common trend with Samuel that for some reason, other than killing motherfuckers, he was getting away with, or he wasn't able to get away with a lot of other crimes.
Right.
You'll see this as the story goes on.
He learned, he developed
No, because the whole time he's killing people, he's still doing other crimes and getting caught for those. But for some reason, escaping the noose when it comes to all these other crimes. It's insane. The boys get sentenced to an indefinite term at a reform school 5 miles outside of Lancaster. Okay? It was an all-boys reform school segregated between white and black. You had to earn enough merit points to be released from this school. Now, because the school was operated more like an open-air prison, it was not uncommon for the older boys to sodomize the younger, weaker boys. They played the prison game.
Listen, man. Listen. I'm glad I'm from the 90s, because god damn. Oh, what was going on?
It gets so much worse. So much worse. Samuel said, when they fucked you up there, it wouldn't be just one, it would be a whole bunch of them.
So like a train?
They would all gang you, and then they would rape you. That is the place I learned to take care of myself, started getting rough like they did, and started fighting back.
Oh, at least he was fighting back. I thought he was going to say, I started taking butts or something. Like,
yeah, no.
He said, you ain't taking mine, I'm taking yours.
Yeah, no, but, he wasn't in there getting meek-milled.
Okay.
Samuel would serve 19 months at this school before being released September 1955 at the age of 15. His family didn't even bother to come and pick him up. He had to take a bus, 3 hours home, his grandparents also then began to act differently towards him and start to punish him more, right?
Father's parents.
His grandparents, who
His
led
father's
him
parents?
believe, who led him
Douse.
believe that they were his real parents.
Yeah.
And so this starts going into some of the rest of this here. It starts sparking up different thoughts for Samuel, right? Because they would always call Paul over, since they lived in the same house, to come and beat the shit out of Samuel when he would act up.
His father, who
was his punishment.
who pretended his brother.
Yeah. So now,
Fucking
so like I said, imagine the demographics here. Okay.
I'm telling
They're
you.
calling someone over who he thinks is his brother to beat his ass, to punish him, who is in actuality his own father.
While his father is fucking married with 7 kids, treating them great, and
pretending like he is his older brother, just beating him up.
Just like, oh yeah, you're my older brother, whatever, don't care.
So Samuel asked a cousin, who in reality was a half sibling, right?
Oh, yep. God damn.
Why it was that Paul would be the one that they would call over to beat him up. And that's when he finally learned that Paul was his dad.
How did the sibling knew?
That's the fucked up
This
part.
is crazy.
Everybody knows this shit.
Except him.
Just
tell him.
He's the fucking last to know all this shit.
And they wonder why he crazy.
So when he asked his grandmother, or mother at this moment, Fanny, she admitted it. And this caused Samuel to fly into a rage. Henry saw this and hit him over the fucking head with a fire poker. And it still didn't stop Samuel. Samuel ended up getting Henry in a headlock, started choking him out, while Fanny pled for Henry's life. Samuel released Henry and then burst into tears apologizing.
Yep.
Fanny then began to cry herself and finally told Samuel the story of how his mom, Bessie May Little, had abandoned him. And this all basically just adds to the countless list of women that let him down as he's growing up, right?
Grandmother let me down. Great grandma let me down. Mama let me down.
Yep.
Shit, hell, grandma let me down by dying when she had mama.
Yeah. Soon after this, Samuel starts to buy true crime magazines instead of comics, so that way he could actually masturbate to real life photographs of dead women. One of his favorite was one of Gloria Ferry. She was this blonde chick that was strangled to death and then dumped naked in a park in Cleveland. Neck bruised, eyes bloodshot, and Samuel would later admit that he had lost track of how many times he masturbated to her picture.
Yeah, he was the devil.
Oh,
I believe it. You know, up until this moment, I didn't believe that people was actually born of the devil, but the motherfucker's the devil. Like, how do you jerk off to, like...
But wait, there's more.
I can't even look at a picture without damn near puking.
September 1956, at 16 years old, Samuel breaks into a dry cleaning store and steals 2 suits and a fedora to impress the girls. But 2 days later, decided to return them because a friend said that no one would believe his broke ass bought them.
I gotta... Like, what? Man, I'm sorry for stealing your stuff, man, you know.
Well,
I was gonna wear it, but ain't nobody gonna believe I bought this. So you can have it back. Like, what was that conversation like?
well, glad you asked. In fear of being caught with the clothes, he took them back to the. He took them back. He was also scared of being sent back to the reform school too if he got caught with them, right?
Right.
Because he hated his time there. So he goes back to the dry cleaner and hope for forgiveness. However, the owner still called the cops anyways, and he was charged with breaking and entering and penny larceny. So on May 27th of 1957, he was sentenced to 17 months at the Ohio State Reformatory.
Yep. And there goes him trying to do the right thing after the wrong thing.
Right.
Done.
So there might have been a little bit of hope still at this point. Who knows? Samuel described the place as being terrible. Said several guys committed suicide. Samuel would quickly establish himself as a fierce fighter, not to be fucked with. And even got himself a prison bitch named Betty, whose real name was Wilbur Taylor. They actually knew each other from the all-boys reform school. Told you this gets fucked up. Gets fucked up.
But why Betty?
I don't. They never go into that on the story of why he chose Betty. Out of Wilbur Taylor decides to call himself Betty. Who knows? Betty, on his first day at this prison, was gang raped by 4 dudes, and so he decided to become a prison sissy to survive. Tell you, the story's fucked up, bro.
That was your survival technique?
It's fucked up. Betty gets down later. Watch. Betty teaches him some shit too.
Okay.
Samuel learned how to draw from another inmate who was named Don Draper, not the one from the show Mad Men.
Right.
So don't get confused with that. In exchange for Samuel teaching Don how to fight. So they kind of changed skills. In fact, Samuel would actually take the drawing skills he learned from Don, and he would actually draw portraits of his victims later on down the road, which also played a pivotal role in solving some of the cases as well.
I figured it was leading into that.
Yeah. Well,
so at this point, Sam is what, about 17, 18?
What did I say he was? Yeah, he was like 17 years old at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, seven.
Yeah, said 1957, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 17.
So, yeah. Samuel's mother wrote him a letter after finding out that he knew who his real mom was. So she wrote him a letter while he was in prison saying, you know, yeah, hi, your mom, I'm your mom. Tried to make some sort of fucking relationship
make
with
amends or something.
Yeah, saying she lives in Florida, stuff like that.
Funny state.
Yeah, you know. They would write sporadically over the next couple of years, but it wasn't nothing crazy at that time. Samuel learned how to box from some of the other inmates as well, including his bitch Betty. His bitch Betty taught him how to.
That bitch is a jack of all trades.
Listen, so it goes to stand. Betty once knocked out another inmate, and then in order to embarrass that inmate, pulled his pants down and started giving him head in front of the whole prison yard. That lowered that person's status so much that that person also became a prison bitch in order to stop getting beat up regularly. I can't make this shit up. It's a fucking fucked up story, right?
Find this nigga.
That's a fucked up story, bro.
Oh my god. Who are we talking about? Where's the movie?
That's what I'm saying. Why is there not a movie about this shit? Samuel will constantly beat up other inmates in prison, in prisoner-held boxing matches that the guards would bet on.
But hold on, I got a question.
Yeah.
The bitch turned to a bitch to stop getting beat up, but yet taught Sam how to fight?
Taught him.
And then he knocking out people and giving them hit? This shit ain't making sense.
It's not making sense at all. Okay. But that's how the story went.
Oh my god.
During this era, other prisoners would get out of jail and become boxing champs. Many thought that Samuel would follow suit when he got out, and at the end of 1958 was then thought he would get his chance, but then at the end of 1958 he was then arrested again for another breaking and entering, and then sent back to prison for 2 more years. So again, like I was telling you, the motherfucker, eventually he gets good at getting away with murders, but
breaking and entering is not his forte, buddy.
Yep. Samuel would get out in 1961 and then arrested again for breaking into a furniture store.
What did he need, a couch?
Maybe a place to sleep. Who knows? Excuse me. January 1964 was released from prison at the age of 24. He spent the majority of the past 8 years in prison, while technically not a virgin, has yet to even kiss a girl yet at this point in his time. Remember, he had a prison bitch. He was paid to get fellatio at 5. This motherfucker fucked up.
Yeah, he's a fucked up virgin.
Yeah. Samuel moves back in with his grandparents in Lorraine. Henry gets him a job working in a factory, and Samuel would start training with the eyes on becoming a pro boxer. In May of 1965, he gets his chance with his first professional bout, boxing in Columbus, Ohio. But he loses that fight and then immediately throws his gloves away and gives up on boxing altogether. So one fight outside of prison, loses, quits.
Wow.
He then meets a receptionist by the name of Jackie Perlin, and they date about 3 months, and then on August of 1965, they get married. So they date 3 months, get married.
Okay, that's how it was back then.
So Samuel finally has sex with a woman for the first time.
Finally not a virgin.
But he later admits that he was only able to climax by imagining he was strangling his bride. Yeah. Fucked up.
That took a turn
It's just fucked up.
real fast.
Together they moved into Jackie's mom's home, staying in her basement. Things went well for the first few months. But then Samuel lost interest in sleeping with Jackie and would start staying out late at night bar hopping. He meets a barmaid by the name of Diane. After a few drinks, they go back to Diane's home where she offers to sleep with him for $20. This offended Samuel, and he punches Diane so hard she goes flying across the room, and then he gets on top of her and starts to choke her. But he does not kill her. He gets up. Diane, terrified at this point, offers to sleep with him for free. Samuel turned her down, saying he didn't want the clap for Christmas. And then he drove around for a little bit before pulling over and masturbating over what just happened. Stays fucked up, don't it?
Yeah. Just when you think like there may be enough to sway him another direction, like you want to hear a few good stories of shit just going good, but it just doesn't happen. Like
Not
from
for Samuel.
From like inception, it's just been bad.
It's been a fuck show.
Yeah.
Samuel gets home, finds Jackie awake still, and she tells him that cops went there looking for him at the house. Apparently, Diane had called the police, claiming Samuel had sexually assaulted her. So
To punch him.
So even though he didn't sexually assault her, he almost choked her to death, though. But that's what she claimed. The couple would then load up their car and immediately hit the road. They drove until their transmission blew out somewhere in North Carolina. From there, they got bus tickets to Coconut Grove, Florida, to move in with Samuel's mother, Bessie, who ran a boarding house. Now, Bessie May introduces Samuel to all her neighbors and puts the couple in her best room next to the kitchen. It did not take long, though, to discover that Bessie May was not right in the head herself. Just when you thought there was greener pastures ahead, my friend.
Just when you thought it was looking good, everyone's on the up and up.
Yeah, no, but no. Samuel discovered that his mom had made a spy hole from the kitchen into his room. When he asked her about it, she said that she didn't understand why she didn't have grandkids yet and was confused of why they weren't having sex.
What the fuck the spy hole got to do with it?
She would be watching her son with his wife in their room. Sick. Hold on. Gets better. One night after bar hopping, Samuel got home to find his mother drunk, waiting in the hallway for him. Bessie May invited Samuel into her room where she got naked and they laid together in bed for a few hours, during which time Samuel would suckle on her breast. Samuel would later confess to having visions of biting Bessie May's nipple off and eating them, and then eating his mother until there was nothing left.
Just hurry up. I'm ready to be done with this.
Great. It's fucking twisted, right?
Oh my God.
After this, Samuel goes back to his room and Jackie is sleeping with no clue on what just happened. February 1966. Bessie has a friend come to visit, female friend. This friend enters the kitchen. She's drunk as hell already, and she sees Jackie cooking up some gumbo. She then makes the statement that Jackie has to be one hell of a cook to snag a man like Samuel. Not Bessie, sorry. That Jackie had to be one hell of a cook to snag a man like Samuel. This pissed Samuel off so much that he knocked the entire pot of gumbo onto this woman, pins her up next to the wall, choking her, grabs a kitchen knife and starts beating her with the handle of the kitchen knife. So he's not stabbing her, he's hitting her with the handle of it. The look of horror on this woman's face was enough to make Samuel nearly ejaculate while beating her up.
And this was his mom's friend?
It was his mom's friend.
Where was his mom at?
She's not in the scene.
Wow.
Samuel and Jackie then take Bessie's car and drive to Cleveland, Ohio to stay with Jackie's aunt. Jackie's aunt, though, gets strange vibes from Samuel, and the following day calls the cops to come and check Samuel out. Cops show up, and they end up arresting Samuel for the rape that was claimed against him by that barmaid named Diane.
Back in Ohio.
Yes.
Okay.
However, that was never taken to trial because Diane had no physical signs of rape, which he didn't try to rape her.
Yeah.
She also had made the claim that Samuel broke in through her window, but then there was no broken window, and there were clear footprints in the snow of two people walking into the apartment, and then one set of footprints leaving. So the charges were dropped. While Samuel was in jail, however, Jackie's family talked sense into her, and she filed for divorce, and this would be the last time that Samuel would see Jackie.
That was his hope.
He was probably going to end up. She was probably going to end up being a victim at this rate.
You think so?
I think so. I wholeheartedly think so. So, no. It was good that she was gone. Yeah. So, Jackie, yes. Sorry, I lost my spot here on where I was on this page. So, a week later, in March of 1966, Samuel steals a car and robs a liquor store for money to make it down to Miami. But he ran a red light and was T-boned by a van in the middle of the intersection. He then leaves the scene, hopped on a Greyhound at a stop. Hopped on a Greyhound, the first Greyhound leaving town. It was at a stop in Baltimore that he attempted to rob another liquor store, but this time the owner pulls out a .38 special and shoots Samuel 5 times.
Damn, all right, Pot.
Samuel didn't die. No, obviously, or else this story would have ended right now. Instead, Samuel wakes up handcuffed to a bed in a hospital, and when released, stood trial for armed robbery, where he was sentenced to 4 years in the Maryland State Penitentiary. However, he only served 2 years and got off on good behavior. So with his record, still managed to get off on good behavior and only did 2 years for armed robbery. Ridiculous.
Yep. That's the justice system.
So since the age of 12, Samuel spent 12 of 15 years in one correctional institute or another. Once released, Samuel finally makes it down to Florida, back to Bessie, who puts Samuel in the same room as before and immediately starts talking about wanting grandchildren again. Obsessed. Super obsessed.
Had he already lost his girl?
Yeah. Samuel started sleeping with another woman named Jovan, who Bessie would watch them through the spy hole. So he knows the spy hole's there, doesn't get it covered up. I'm telling you, this dude is just as twisted as everybody around him.
The family is twisted, bro.
The whole family. Push the button. Start over.
Send the nukes.
Yeah. Bessie was always drunk and grew obsessed with Samuel. In fact, Samuel said that he woke up one day with his mom laying next to him in bed. She looked at his dick and said, "Ooh, look at my big son's dick." Then she said, "I be your mother. You want to get back where you came from?" Disgusting. Nasty.
Damn.
Samuel would claim that situations like this would occur for the next few years. On New Year's Eve of 1970, Samuel runs into 33-year-old Mary Jo Brosley, who was a manic depressive white woman who divorced her husband, leaving him and 2 kids in Boston to travel to Miami to become a sex worker.
So they was doing that 304 shit back then, huh?
Yeah.
She traveled to be a sex worker. All right.
Samuel bought Mary Jo 3 gin and tonics before suggesting they leave together. Mary Jo told Samuel that it would cost $50 as they were driving to have sex with her. Mary Jo, being drunk, passed out on the passenger seat, and so Samuel drove deep into the Everglades, parked, and then the two got into the back seat. That's when it happened, according to Samuel. He said the first girl he ever did it to, he took her life. Said, I took her out into the woods alone, just me and her. She didn't realize that I was going to make my fantasy finally come true. I put my hands around her throat and my lips on her mouth, and I started to squeeze. Instead of me just choking her and leaving her alive, I went all the way. I put my hands around her neck, and that was it. She eventually wanted it to happen, you know. This is all things he said. Samuel would then go on to say that he was overwhelmed with the feeling that he now possessed her, that she was going to be only his forever. He would speak to her corpse, saying he loved her over and over, kissed her on the lips before being hit with a feeling of panic. He pulled her from the vehicle, attempted to dig a shallow grave with his bare hands, but the ground was too hard, so he rolled her to a bush and he left. He returned the next morning with a shovel to try and bury her better. He did a shit job on that as well, because when he buried her, it was like one leg that was still hanging out of the ground. An alligator ripped it off because they're in the Everglades, and then drops it at like some trail later, and somebody else walking through the Everglades finds it, and then eventually, they find her body later on. But from this point on, a monster was born.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a monster was born, and everything leading up to that first victim, it's all bad. You could just tell whoever's dealing with shit like that is going to turn out to be mentally fucking ill. That's L family, man.
Doomed.
Fucked up family.
Fucking start.
Yep. And this is how you create this is how you create a monster.
So, that, my friends, was just part 1.
Part 1.
Stick around for part 2, where we discuss more of the insanely heinous and criminal shit that he does to all the other women.
Yep.
This man confesses eventually to 93 women that he kills.
Yeah. And just when you think there couldn't be more, there's more. So stick around.
As always, subscribe, share, show that you care.